So that money that's being spent out of state, I think that's another one of those accountability in government. And I thought that's a great piece of work that they've done to try and investigate whether these programs are being abused or used improperly. Yeah.
Okay, what other issues are important to you, Grant? We've got taxes and mortgages.
So home foreclosures, that was number one. Taxes, that's a big one. And then crime situation in North Minneapolis. Now, I think that if you come out and say, well, I'm for lower crime, I don't think anybody would stand against that. And even my opponent would say, well, I'm for less crime. But really, the question is, how do we get there? And having lived in North Minneapolis for the last 8 years, I've experienced what it's like to go through the, experiencing criminal actions happening. My house has been robbed twice. My car was stolen. I've had my car vandalized. I've had a lot of different things happen. And so I realized that most of the time what happens is the police department comes out, they write you out this little blue card, they say, here you go, and then they walk away. Now, I was just talking to Sheriff Stanek the other day and starting to talk to him about some of these issues. And I said, well, what is it about Minneapolis? Why is it that we're not investigating these crimes more? And he said, well, we've got a mobile crime lab unit for the Sheriff's Department that we would be willing to come out and help with these investigations. And they said that the Minneapolis Public Police Department really doesn't want us to come out and help. And they don't want that interaction with the Sheriff's Department.
Is there any explanation as to why the Minneapolis Police Department feels that way?
I haven't gone and talked to them yet, and I would like to go and talk to some of the folks over there. I've been kind of busy with door knocking right now because it's summertime. There's a limited window where you've got until 9:30 at night, and it's still light out. People still answer.
And a lot of houses to knock on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I tried to focus there.
If you're in the central city, probably once it gets dark, you're going to have to.
Well, once it gets dark, people really don't want to answer.
That's right, they don't.
Anymore.
And they don't do that in Ridgefield. I discovered that myself. I'd always quit at sundown.
Yeah, because usually people even say, well, it's getting kind of late. I mean, do you think this is really the appropriate time to be knocking on my door? I really don't answer it, or I'm in my pajamas and putting my kids to bed. It's not,
that's
it's not the time to be asking people to come to the door and talk to you about politics. But that being said, I haven't had a chance to go down there and talk to them specifically about this issue, but I have followed up on some of the crimes that have happened recently in my neighborhood. And I've heard this story over and over again that the Minneapolis Police Department really doesn't follow up on property crimes or really any kind of crimes if they're not a homicide. And I think that's because they've really been stretched thin. They don't have many police officers. And Mayor Ryback actually promised us 50 more police officers. We raised some taxes to pay for that, and they're still not there. Yet at the same time, the city of Minneapolis is getting ready to build $50,000 artistic drinking fountains. We're going to have 10 of those now. So instead of police officers investigating property crimes, that's what we're getting out of the city of Minneapolis. So I think as the state legislator representing my neighborhood, I think it'll be one of the most important things I can do is go and talk to the city and say, hey, look, we need to manage our resources and how we run this city a little bit better. And if you expect to get money from the state, you'd better do things a little different.
Well, you would hope that they would.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to office in South Minneapolis, and I remember one time that our office got burglarized, and Officer Charles Stenvig came out to investigate. And when I saw Officer Stenvig, I knew that we were not going to get the crime solved. I just knew that. And I was right, they didn't. So I think I can sympathize a little bit with you there. What's your next issue?
Well, we've covered a few now. So we've covered home foreclosures, taxes. We've touched a little bit on schools. Now we've talked a little bit about crime. I think going back to the schools thing might be...
Schools is awfully important for people in Minneapolis.
Right. So I mentioned the referendum that's going to be put on the ballot. So they're coming to us for another $60 million. And that it really struck us that in this year, after just 2 years ago, they devised a plan. They said, this is how we're going to make Minneapolis public school system viable. We're going to close 6 schools on the north side. And one of those schools that they decided to close was a school called Jordan Park. It was a brand new school that they had just built in 2000. So we spent $15 million building this school. It was open for less than 6 years. Still brand new, beautiful school. And in 2006, they decided to close it. Now, what was the reason they closed it? They said that under No Child Left Behind, after 2 fresh starts, that's where they come in and fire all the teachers because they can't get the numbers up, and they tried to repurpose the school twice, that they weren't able to get a handle on the achievement scores that they needed, and so they closed the school. Now, that to me says that the school district doesn't really know how to manage its resources. And for me to see that we've had a steady increase in the amount that the school district has as a budget, each year we've seen about 5 or 6% increase. So over the last 8 years, we've seen the school budget grow to almost $700 million. That's what they want with the next 60 million.
Now, 5% increase, that's far greater than inflation has been.
Absolutely. But
it
here's
sure
the
has.
really interesting thing. Over the same last 8 years, we've seen a decrease each year in enrollment at about the same rate, 5%. So in 2000, we had about 47,000 students. Now we have 32,000 students. At least that's what's projected. So tell me why the school district needs an additional $60 million to educate 15,000 less students.
To meet the demands of the teachers union. That's the short answer.
That to me, it just doesn't make sense. I mean,
Do you know what Minneapolis spends per student?
I actually do.
I think about, what is it, about 15,000, I think.
Yeah, it's about $16,000 per student, but
It's one of the highest in this
the
country,
more
too.
interesting number is how much do we spend per special education student?
Right.
That's about $32,000 per student. And those are increasing very quickly. So you have to ask yourself, well, why are there so many students that are on special ed now? And I think it's because we've sort of relaxed the rules on what it takes to be a special ed student. Usually if a kid, was fidgety and wouldn't pay attention,
They also get more money from the government if they declare you special ed.
Exactly.
They're
So-
looking for a reason to run up the numbers, and they're looking for a reason to give them medicines.